Start streaming. Zen. Hi everyone. Welcome to week 3 of Why Is This On My Screen? Thanks. Intro to Game Storytelling. Alright, so this week we're going to cover NieR, Automata. If you don't want spoilers,
leave.
Get out of here. No,
Did you play it?
no.
I'm fine with spoilers, whatever.
I mean, it's not going to be... I guess it's going to be spoilers.
Everyone dies. Oh wait.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Everyone dies when you die in game.
Everyone
It's game
dies
over,
eventually.
You know when you die in the game,
You
because
die
your
for
game
real.
over. That's the spoiler. Everyone dies.
What
Because you
was
died
the feel on
game.
that one? I thought you were
What
going
are
to
you
say
saying?
you
So
died
it's
for
like
real.
a game. It's like an in-lore mechanic that every time you die, they actually all died.
I mean, it's literally just
I don't
written
understand.
in the game that...
Oh, so you don't. At the end of the game, you realize they've all been dying over and over and over and over as you've been playing the game.
Wait a second. Never mind. Don't worry about what I just
Don't worry about it.
I think that's literally what.
No,
you're
I'm just
right?
saying.
They've been
Whatever.
getting replaced the entire game without you realizing it. Is that what you're saying?
No. What? What?
Think of it kind of like Assassin's Creed. There's a mechanic that explains what happens when you lose. That makes it so it doesn't break the story if you do, but it's implied that they never lose.
Yeah.
Like, canonically speaking.
Basically.
That aside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, first off,
Long
why NieR? Because, I mean, it's a good game, so, like, why the story? And a big thing I like about it, other than just the... I mean, the presentation is really freaking good. But, a big reason why I chose it is because it does a few things that I want to explain very well, such as your expectations as a player when you go into a game and you're expecting like just, hey, I go in, I beat the dude, the big bad guy, like it's ending, right? And then you get like this screen. You beat the first route. Out of like, I mean, I guess it's technically a spoiler that there's more than one route, but it doesn't really matter at this point.
You can run into one of the alternate endings, like, in the first, like, half an hour, so not really. But you can do the same warning the moment you find any of them.
Pretty much. So, you go through the route and you like, it's like, oh, I get to play the game again? Question mark. And the second route is technically the same thing, with like some gameplay differences, maybe a lot of gameplay differences. And it's a lot about sort of managing the expectations a player has out of your story, where if you only play the first route, like the first A route, you miss out on basically what?
70%.
More than half? A good like
I'd say like 70, 60.
80%? 80% of the story, depending on how much of the side quests you do.
We skipped all the side quests.
Don't worry about it. And it's like, oh, okay, alright. It's about like playing with that expectation of, oh, there's more. There's like more game to be had, more story to be had. And it's like a valuable like thing to know about when you're writing a story. To be able to think about, hey, what is my player thinking about? What is my player expecting when they get to this part of the story? Like, if you weren't spoiled, of course, like you get to the end of the route and you're like, oh, this seems like a bit rushed and incomplete. Like, I don't know what half the stuff is going on is about. And then this happens. And it's like the whole idea of toying with those expectations is what I think Nier is really good at. Because I'll go into this like later in the slide. But it's sort of the whole like, oh, this is supposed to be an action adventure game. Like, I'm supposed to be like not caring about things I murder. And it turns out that you and the machines that you're supposed to destroy are made of the same things. That you're basically like made for the purpose of destroying things. And it's sort of like, yeah, that's what you're playing the game for. But to have like that expectation of, yeah, I just want to go through and like beat the boss and stuff. To have that expectation like clearly like displayed as part of your character is like, it plays with it sort of like fulfills that expectation in a way you don't expect. And so I guess like what, because I don't know how many of you guys played Nier. I was gonna like ask you, but considering like you haven't. And I'm guessing many of you guys have.
I have. Well, I mean, I've seen full walkthroughs.
I've seen the entire game.
I mean, I guess it's different because it's like what did you expect after you saw like, oh, this is only the first route of the game?
I actually expected as much. I'm not unfamiliar with Yoko Taro's work. Honestly, I would have been surprised if it was the opposite.
For me, I was just kind of like, oh, okay, I'm guessing it'll be like a new game plus or something. Which, I mean, kind of. But
Kind of, but not
Like
really.
New Game Plus, and then it went into Season 2.
Season 2. And so I guess it's like in your story, like how could you play with what your audience is expecting? Like for example in your game even. Like I know you explained to me like you want it to look a certain way on the surface.
Mm-hmm. There's more to it than just that.
Yeah. Like, could you explain that?
I mean, I can explain how Nier kind of does it. Although you might talk about it.
I mean, like, cause I'm like sort of like, it's like how could you do it in a similar way to Nier, I guess?
Like when you, it's basically, I mean, I want to compare it to Nier where, I want to compare it to Nier in that you think that, oh, this is it to a section of the game. It's like you move past it, you're never gonna come back. But Nier makes you like go back to that section and to figure out more things in the game. Like that is in that section, I guess.
Yeah.
How do it's kind of like in the city where it's like the hub area, but like multiple things happen to the area. And there's just multiple parts in the map area, so that you have to keep going back to it. And it's like it's the same area, but it doesn't get tiring because you're doing new and different things in that area.
Yeah, that's where the game is kind of changing on you in ways you don't expect.
Yeah, It's like in season 2, it's the same characters, it's the same like kind of story that is going on, but they've added more things on top of that to make it feel like it's like it feels like season 2 kind of.
Yeah.
Like, you know when you like watch a series and then you watch season 2 and it's like everything has changed. Like Gurren Lagann, right? Have you seen it?
Is that the robots on the planet and they're getting invaded or whatever?
Kind
and they
of.
live underground?
Okay, so the first part of the series it starts like underground.
Yeah.
And then it goes okay, so like the first like episode I think it starts underground and you go up. It's kind of like expanding your horizon kind of thing. That's like kind of what NieR's does. It's like it expands your horizon.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, you thought it was just underground? No, there's actually the whole overworld of the Earth. But then Gurren Lagann goes even farther. It's like, oh, it's not just the Earth. It's like the entire space. It
Entire
like
fucking
goes
universe.
from being underground to being this giant robot in space. That's
Yeah.
how big the spiral is, kind of thing. That's just
Yeah.
kind of. I guess that's how NieR Automata does it. It's like it starts really small and it just
That's cool.
blows up,
Yeah.
What does escalating make it?
escalating. Makes it interesting. That's for sure.
Well, it gives the story like a certain scale to it. It gives it a certain feel. Like one of my favorite books does that, where it's you start out as like an old man retiring, and then he decides to recruit himself into the military because he doesn't want to be a boring old man. And then they give him like a young body because they use old people for their military. And then he gets sent off to fight wars for the humans against all the other aliens. So it's like a galaxy at war, and all the old men are fighting the aliens. And the story just has like this humongous sense of scale to it as he goes through all these different conflicts with these different species. I really like that. Yeah.
Mm. And I guess like while we're talking about ways that like they do this well, we can talk about like in what ways can this potentially fail. It's like maybe you hint at too much. Maybe you.
Actually, the exact opposite. Not enough hinting. Ever watched an M. Night Shyamalan film? You know exactly what I'm talking about.
That's not.
With the twist, it's like you need to have some level of believability to it, and enough of a lead-in that it becomes like it's a cool little surprise, rather than where did this come from?
Yeah, it's like the characters are like reasoning things out, and then you're sitting there like, how did that person ever reason that out? That doesn't make any sense. The person's just jumping all over the place.
You need Batman.
No, I'm thinking of Lady in the Water.
But basically, with audience expectations, just define them is not the point.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, I could literally go from like a light novel story to horror gore for no apparent reason. The shift could come out of nowhere, and I've defied audience expectations,
shifting?
but that hasn't gotten me anywhere other than shocking my audience.
Like shifting without enough like
Context.
foreshadowing.
Context and foreshadowing, you need that.
Yeah. It does a pretty good job of like building all that up as you go along. And I guess now I'm going to talk about a few themes that are like tangentially not really related, but it's like sort of a general feeling of emptiness, both from the world and from like what you interact in it. Like even if you like take a look at the concept of it, it's sort of like yeah, it's post-apocalyptic, but nobody's rebuilding. Nobody's like trying to put it back together again, particularly. And it's you go around and you don't have like people to interact with except in these like concentrated spaces. And it all comes together to a kind of feeling of grand emptiness. Sort of like, I would say, negative space, but for living beings. It gives like it goes from emphasizing like the people and to instead emphasizing the environment that's like. So when you're out and about, when you're in like the exploration zones, you gotta focus on like the world that you put your story in. And this works for a lot of different types of games, usually like apocalypse like style settings. So like NieR, you have Fallout. Fallout does a lot of like negative space but for people kind of things where you have entire abandoned vaults. And it also gives a highlight to like what is left, what kind of people are still there. So in NieR you have like these little camps, these little villages that if you just had a populated city, they wouldn't be anything special. But with all this emptiness that you have to roam through, that you have to battle through, it's like it gives a new emphasis to it. So it might sound obvious that hey, a post-apocalyptic story should have like not a lot of like people in it, but you can use it for other kinds of settings where you want to give a sense of, hey, I want them to look at my environment. I want to look at nature and what's happened to it. So like if they're in like a strange land, if you've taken your player to like a new place, you might consider like putting them in an empty room, an empty forest, an empty dungeon, just to let them explore and see, hey, what's here? What is in store for me while I have nothing to interact with? And it's also sort of a way to pace what kind of action is happening, where you have moments of battle, you have like fighting the machines and the bosses and whatnot, but these moments of like, wow, there's nothing here, and all I can do is like look at the environment. It gives like a sense of contrast to, oh, I gotta do something, I gotta interact with something every single moment of the game. And like, I'm not saying that this is what you should do for like every game story, because definitely not like a one size fits all type thing. But it's a technique that you can deliberately use to give a sense of give a sense of like, I'm alone here, and like sort of not coerce, but like to nudge them in the direction of looking at their surroundings. And another theme I want to talk about is this theme of imitation in NieR. And I mean, you can probably guess what I'm talking about in a game of like androids and robots, where like the machines are basically doing their best to imitate what humans are thought to do. But I want to talk about less of like a direct copying, and more of like that what people call uncanny valley of sorts. Like, not just in, like, the art, like, in the, oh, this is too close to human-like, but not human-like, I don't like it. But in a, like, getting the feeling that they're trying to copy what a human does. And it's like, it's like they're trying to humanize your characters, even if they're not people, even if they're not, like, distinctly human. You can give them, like, human-like attributes, like you can personify them, like what you would do in creative writing, like you give stuff that isn't people, like personification, except in a more, like, gameplay, a more visual form where you can interact with them as if they were people. And so it's like it works in NieR, and then, like, it's like humans and, like, robots and androids trying to imitate humans. But, like, what other settings could you use it in? Like, why would you want to use it? Like, say you have a fantastical setting of, like, spirits and whatnot, but you still want to make them personable to people. You still want people to empathize with them in some way. And it's like you give them those kinds of attributes, you give them those kinds of traits you would see in people. Like, you give them emotional reactions, you give them, like for example, in NieR you have, like, a lot of machines with brother-sister relationships and stuff like that. So, like, I was going to use an example from Ocean's Demise, but I, like, completely forgot it. Because you had this whole thing of, like, the abyss is sort of, I don't know, I forget if you're still calling it the abyss. But like you give it a sense of, you want to give it a sense of, like, it's almost alive, right?
Yes, it's kind of like, yeah.
So like just trying to find ways to personify it, to personify like the creatures inside it, or maybe even the environment itself, like giving it emotional reactions to, oh, what if you decide to like harm the environment in some way? How, like, would it react to you? Like,
I mean, basically the it's kind of like what I have is that it's kind of like, I don't want to, like, a mirror of like the real world. So it's kind of like, basically, like, the people, the things that live in Abyss they have the emotions of like how it is in our world. It's just kind of like strengthened, and it's like emotions are able to, like, affect the world around it, and the Abyss happens just to be like, oh, where all the sad and not depression, like just like the I guess strong feelings go, I guess, kind of. So it has kind of like a like things are affected by how angry, like, a spirit feels, basically. So I guess it would have to do a lot with emotion, because it would be like trying to get away from something that's trying to escape the abyss, because it's not really a good place to be, I guess. I don't know how to explain it. It's a jumbled mess right now.
But like you wanna have a lot of humanizing qualities to it.
Yeah, I mean, like, you're supposed to, like, care about the monsters, even though they're trying to kill you. At least some of the monsters. Or the
Yeah. So like what kind of behaviors would you give them? Like how would you sort of humanize them?
I mean, they have, like, relations with each other, kind of like, oh, mom's, like family, or just, like, loved ones, or stuff like that.
Yeah, stuff like that. Like
I don't know, I was thinking like, what if you had something where like, wait, so is the abyss like separated from the world in some way? Is
Yeah.
there like some like barrier or interface?
There's a
between
barrier
them?
that separates the two.
So
and it
what
was
is
like-
Is this Undertale? This is literally the plot of Undertale.
I'm gonna throw my phone at you.
So what if like one character from the abyss walked up to a barrier and was just standing there and tried to start a conversation with someone
No,
else?
there's not like a physical barrier. They're just like in between dimensions, and you can't cross through the dimensions unless
Dude,
you.
you can't just talk through
Well,
dimensions.
I'm trying to think of something.
It's
maybe,
not like Undertale in which there's actually a physical barrier.
I didn't mention anything like that afterwards. I was just
What?
saying it was funny. It's like, dude, you can't just
No.
talk. across
No, that's not
dimensions.
what they're talking about.
Did you watch the movie Interstellar?
No, should I should watch it.
There's this thing about like communicating across dimensions in it.
Okay.
And it's got some sort of interesting stuff with like personifying non-person like objects.
Non-humanoid objects.
Yeah.
Because it's like
Have you watched it?
no.
Oh, we should watch it.
it's a really good movie. You need a good sound system.
I don't have that.
But I think I get the point where it's like stuff that you wouldn't normally see as human.
Yeah. But it's like it's almost like you could have like some object that's sent across, and then that sends a message to someone when they see it come across, and suddenly they feel like something's trying to communicate with them because it's like, well, there's no way that object randomly appeared there. Like someone intentionally sent it to me.
Yeah.
So then it sort of weirds you out, and then you start to feel like you're communicating with someone even though you didn't see who sent it at all or anything.
It kind of actually reminds me of this one RPG game called Corpse Party. Do you know?
I think I've heard of it. I don't know what
So
it is.
basically, there's this crazy occult girl, and she's basically placing candles around. Who just carries around candles and matches all the time, and she basically uses them to kind of like, it's like a safe spot. But because all her friends are kind of like scattered across the dimensions, so they're all in like a school, but like that school is like shattered and fractured into like different dimensions, so that even though like she could be right here and someone could be right next to her, but she wouldn't be able to communicate or talk or like even interact with the person because they're on like a different dimension. But the candles carry over to every dimension, so that candles are basically like the safe spot because they're like safe, because they're like warm to life and stuff like that.
Mm.
So I guess that's kind of communicating through dimensions, just in like a different way. Also, there's one where like the girl like gets thrown violently into a wall, and she's just a pile of guts, and the guts transfer over to every single dimension. It's pretty like
Guts just
pretty
appear
gruesome.
in every dimension.
yes, it's basically her guts are in every single dimension.
Oh, yeah.
So is that how you see her die? So it's like this tense thing where you're sitting in the blank room and you're like, is she gonna survive or not? And then all of a sudden guts appear on the wall.
No,
and
so
you're just
basically-
like, I guess she's dead.
So basically, when you're following the viewpoint of another character, they see her die, and then you later on you realize those guts were hers, and like because you played another point of view previously to like the one where she hits the wall, and when you were playing the previous one, she was already guts, but this one went back in time and like been like, oh, this is how she died. She like got slammed into a wall and stuff.
Want to see that one in slow motion?
It's pretty gross, but I like how they use that.
Also, I don't understand how slamming into a wall, even at a very high velocity, just turns you into guts.
I thought we're solid enough that you would at least damage the wall.
Maybe I can pull
Well,
it up.
apparently the walls.
Well, it might have been a brick wall. I don't think we can go through brick walls.
Obviously,
It's
you
a
can't go
horror game,
through.
so don't worry about it.
Alright. I mean,
I use that to describe most of other people's plots. Don't worry about it. Probably not important enough anyways.
I forgot her name.
I'm done now. Like, I could have gone into like a bunch of philosophy bullshit, but that's not really like writing like a story. It's more like story analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's not really helpful to write a story. It's just more helpful to like understand the story, and that's it's not really what I'm here to do.
I have a hard time understanding the relation between writing good stories and then being able to analyze stories to see whether or not they're good. Like, because there's that thing of like how film critics essentially they apparently exist on some other plane where they're capable of like analyzing movies in a way better than we ever could.
That's why I watch a lot of that stuff.
It just comes from watching a lot of movies. They watch a lot of movies.
See, but
There
that
is
isn't-
no shortcut to it. You just watch a lot.
But that
and you get good.
doesn't necessarily mean that they're coming out with like objective facts, because then a less informed person would watch a movie and love it, but because they have so much knowledge they think it's garbage. But that doesn't mean the movie's universally garbage. It just means to their perspective the movie's garbage.
Yeah, it's like all the elite. I guess I just call them elitists because they watch too much and they think everything is shit, even though everyone else thinks it's entertaining. So.
I mean, that's because they're looking for more out of their experience.
Yeah, they're
than achieve
looking
the
because
result.
they've looked at too many, so that the
It
one
just means they have
everything
better
is
taste.
yeah. I mean, Cameron.
But, so the experienced dudes don't have better taste. The ones who have seen a lot and can form a valid opinion.
Oh, this is
on
the
it.
anime.
I don't understand you saying you don't agree with their opinion, but to say that because of their experience, it's suddenly the other way around. They're now bad at analyzing it is complete garbage. That sounds like a fundamentalist or a flat earther. I mean, for real.
I mean, to go back to the whole humanized piece, I don't know. I'm like trying to find the guts now. There's no way I can find this.
Stop streaming.